Here at Subaru Gears, we're often asked which kind of transmission to choose for the project. Here is a rough guide. This first transmission is a 5-speed WRX transmission. This second one is a 5-speed Forester transmission. This third one is a 5-speed Forester dual range transmission. It's important to understand the differences between these transmissions to be able to make your choice. This first transmission is the standard Subaru WRX 5-speed. It's identified in two simple ways. The first is the serial number here. It's a 754. You'll also see the style of clutch lever that it has is a forged clutch lever with two mounting holes where the clutch slave cylinder goes. If you have a look at the clutch setup on the front, you'll see it is a pull style clutch. The release bearing is clipped into the clutch fingers and is pulled away from the engine. You'll see the pivot points cast into the gearbox housing. The second transmission we have is the Forester GT or Liberty Legacy transmission. It looks very similar to the WRX 5-speed transmission. In fact, the casing is almost the same. Sometimes these will have a turbo gear set inside them, sometimes they won't. It's identified by a different style up here. If you look at the clutch lever, it's a stamped steel clutch lever and it doesn't have the two mounting bosses for the clutch slave cylinder. It has two mounting bosses at the front here that uses a clutch slave cylinder that pushes the lever back away from the engine. If you're identified, this is also a 754, so you need to clearly identify what style this is. Notice the clutch lever here is stamped, it's on a pivot, and it uses your standard push style clutch mechanism that will push onto the clutch fingers. The third transmission we have is the Forester dual range transmission. Now this is one that I don't usually recommend for converting to reverse drive because it has the dual range on it. This is easily identified. If you have a look here, you'll see there is a sensor that shows you if it's in high range or low range. You'll see here there is also a mechanism to go from high range to low range. That is the easiest way to see this type of transmission. If you also look at the bell housing and clutch mechanism, you'll see that this has more bolts holding the front in place. You'll see all these bolts around the front of the transmission. This is to hold the extra shaft in for the dual range setup. So this is one that can be used, but I usually shy away from. This particular one is a TY755. It's a later model transmission. You'll see also that does not have the stub axles coming out. Later model transmissions are built with a stub axle and CV joint in one. A basic tour of the Subaru WRX transmission. Starter motor location, stub axles for attaching super flanges, clutch slave cylinder mounting, clutch fork. You'll see these two sensor connector wires go down to these two sensors here. This is the neutral switch and this is the reverse switch. We attempt to keep both switches activated and used when we shorten these transmissions, but you can do without the neutral switch if necessary. This housing here contains the center differential and the split gears to transmit the power out to the four-wheel drive system. This is removed and all these components from here are removed because they're no longer needed in the two-wheel drive reverse version. Looking back, you have your shift rod, a shift rod coupling, mounts. This here is the vehicle speed sensor. This is connected to your ECU to tell your ECU the speed that the vehicle's doing, particularly when it's slowing down, approaching a set of traffic lights or a stop. This is important to help the ECU know what it's doing. Dipstick. This dipstick is no longer used because the dipstick itself interferes with the ring and pinion when it's reversed on this side, so we usually block this off and no longer use it.